guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle. I have really been enjoying reading all of the index rules for all the different armies in Warhammer 40,000, which has been super easy because they're all available for free online as PDFs. It's a really great system. Games Workshop, please don't paywall it. Almost everything makes a whole lot of sense and is just moving over from the old 9th edition codexes into the new indexes, but there are some units that I have found that are a little bit weird and wacky, particularly in the Legends indexes. They've done a pretty darn good job of bringing back every single unit that has ever existed in all of Warhammer 40,000, and there's a few that really struck out to me as something that they definitely should bring back into the world of Warhammer, and some things that I really was not expecting to ever have rules for 40k proper, but here they are. First among them is a unit that I desperately think they should bring back to Warhammer, and that is the Sisters of Battle Repressor Tank. Number one, awesome name. Number two, it is an up-armored rhino with a giant ram scoop in the front. This thing is awesome. As much fun as a regular old rhino is, they're just metal boxes. Take that metal box and make it a little bit cooler. A super tough, cheap unit for the Sisters of Battle would be really, really awesome. And the rule that came up for it is pretty good. We've seen this a few places for some of the vehicles in the other factions of 40k, but if a Sisters of Battle unit gets charged while they're within 3 inches of this tank, they can just hop right back inside and protect themselves from getting charged. A really powerful ability for the Sisters of Battle, who even though they are wearing power armor, are still a little bit squishy with their unit profiles. So being able to like hop a squad out, shoot, and then if they get charged, return back into the tank for safety is a really powerful ability. I just really like this thing. I don't get why it was only ever Forge World and is now completely discontinued. I think it's really cool and should be in the game. And it's called the Repressor. The only way I see this returning to the world of Warhammer 40,000 is if it returns as a Primaris vehicle, because it has the name Repressor and it has that suffix that all Primaris units have. Annihilator, Eradicator, Suppressor, Eradicator, they all have this same naming convention that becomes really obnoxious when you're trying to think of Space Marine units in your head. So I could totally see the Repressor becoming part of the Space Marines, but no, bring it back for the Sisters of Battle because it's a really cool tank. It also really reminds me of some of the like kit bash together vehicles that were used for the Adeptus Arbites back in the days of 2nd edition when they were still an army for 40k. Just a really neat little piece of 40k history. And speaking of another blast from the past from Games Workshop's history, back in the days of 7th edition 40k, they came out with a very, very exclusive Space Marine, the Imperial Space Marine, which was just a one-off replica of an old Rogue Trader Space Marine, kind of before the Space Marines were even a thing. It was based on a model that was back when Space Marines were actually convicts that were kind of like lobotomized or made kind of crazy and put into suits of power armor, like before they came up with the whole Knights, like ye olde Knights idea for Space Marines. The Imperial Space Marine had a weapon called the Disintegrator Combi Gun, and it was actually really, really, really good. And for a period of 7th edition, everybody was taking this one unit in their games, kit bashing it, or actually trying to get a hold of one of the limited edition models, because it was just a really solid unit. It was just one Space Marine, so it was really cheap, and it was a really, really good gun. The index version of Imperial Space Marine isn't nearly as good. It's a pretty good bolter and probably worth taking because it's really, really cheap. But the Imperial Space Marine, that, like if I was in charge of Games Workshop, I would say no, do not waste time writing rules for the Imperial Space Marine. Arguably it shouldn't have had rules back in the day, but they gave it rules. And that means that it is still here in the Index Space Marine for the Legends units. But speaking of the most legendary Space Marine thing of all time, Legion of the Damned. A super awesome fan favorite thing for Space Marines, absolutely beloved by fans, and a lot of people have done full Legion of the Damned themed armies. They're just really cool. Maybe they're the Firehawks, maybe they're just literal ghosts, but whenever, when the Imperium is absolutely on the back foot, when they're losing the battle really, really badly and all hope is lost, then from out of nowhere, Space Marines wreathed in flame enter the battlefield, absolutely rip and tear, and then as mysteriously as they arrived, they vanish. They're the Imperium's demons. They're really cool. They're here, and they have all of the accoutrement that they used to have. They have all of the weapon options. For the old models, I have some of the metal ones, then they were sold in resin for a very long time, and now they're gone, but I'm sure they're not gone for good. They're so popular and mysterious and interesting, and they made an appearance in the Gathering Storm novels. I definitely think Legion of the Damned is coming back, and I really hope it's as an elite unit for Space Marines, just something that any chapter can take in their armies. I don't think it should be an actual detachment in an army list, because that's not really what they are. They're almost a magic spell, like from Age of Sigmar. Just some really, really powerful Space Marines that can show up and do a lot of damage and then disappear. If you want to bring Damned Legionnaires into your games of Warhammer 40,000, you can totally do it with Index Legion of the Damned. They're pretty darn good and have a monstrously long list of upgrades, although their ability is pretty lame, just making an enemy unit take a Battle Shock tests. Battle Shock tests are kind of weird. Reading the rules initially for the first time, it seemed like it was going to be a really powerful thing, but I just find things never really fail Battle Shock. And every now and then when you absolutely need something to not fail its Battle Shock, it will, but then you can just pay a stratagem for it to have not failed Battle Shock. So I think that they could have come up with a spicier rule, but I think that they will come up with a spicier rule when they bring back the Legion of the Damned, because they definitely are going to, and some Primaris Legion of the Damned are going to be absolutely awesome. They're probably going to be Primaris size, but a really cool thing would be to actually just use them as an opportunity to upscale the classic previous armor marks for Space Marines and just have Primaris sized classic Space Marines. Now, so far, all of these units have sort of made some sense to be back in the world of Warhammer, but one thing that I was really shocked by was the Index Unaligned. Things that aren't actually part of any one particular faction in Warhammer, but somehow still have rules for the game of 40k. Which is kind of really cool. They probably didn't need to do that, but it's really awesome that these rules exist. And I'm really excited about the Amble. It did have rules for 9th edition Warhammer 40,000. They just came out randomly in a Warhammer community article, and here they are again. The Amble with its monstrous claws, such an awesome unit. A lot of people actually have this unit from Blackstone Fortress, and it just came out in another weird little Games Workshop board game that they made. It's an awesome miniature. I mean, some people, like me, still have the old lead one from back in the days of 2nd edition 40k. It's a really, really awesome unit. And it's unaligned, so any army in 40k can take one amble, or actually a few ambles, because it's not capped at units, but it's actually capped at a certain number of points. So depending on the size of game you're playing for 40k, you can actually bring a lot of unaligned units. And I kind of do want to bring quite a few ambles to a game of Warhammer 40,000 just to see what happens. It doesn't really make any sense. Like, they're just animals, but I guess, you know, they can be corralled and prodded towards the enemy, and they actually have some really spicy special rules and abilities. It has Deep Strike, Feel No Pain 5-up, really good Feel No Pain, and it has an ability where if it gets shot, it gets frenzied, and then it gets to fight again as if it were the fight phase. It's actually kind of some interesting rules going on here, a lot more than some of the other things in the Legends category, where Games Workshop just kind of grabbed a rule that already existed for something else and just pasted it on. The Amble actually feels like they really specially tailored it, which makes me think that whoever was in charge of actually writing the Legends Index was just having fun with it, because these aren't technically real rules. Like, they're functional in the game of Warhammer 40,000, but they're not ever meant to get updated or changed or actually be balanced around the rest of the game. So I think they just kind of had fun with it. And speaking of just having fun with it, the Amble did have rules for 40k, but I don't think the Guardian drone and the Spindle drones, also from Blackstone Fortress, ever had rules for use in the game of Warhammer 40,000. But here they are. And I'm really like when I saw these rules actually existed, I immediately went on eBay and I bought some more. I have so many Spindle drones now. They're a phenomenal modeling opportunity because they're super alien in the world of Warhammer 40,000. Like, there's aliens like the Necrons and the Tyranids, but we know everything about them and how they look. But the Guardian drone and the Spindle drones are just weird mechanical, biomechanical entities. The Guardian drones are the giant protectors of the little Spindle drones, and even the little Spindle drones are actually pretty tough, coming in squads of 4 with a 5-up Feel No Pain. It's a really interesting unit, and my mind immediately started turning. I think that the Guardian drones and Spindle drones could be a really fun thing to have around. I think Imperial Knights are also a really good loner army, just like loan somebody a single Imperial Knight, but that kind of only works at the beginning of a game if you have like 3 people who all want to try, but one person doesn't know that much about 40k. A Knight keeps things nice and simple with just one data sheet and like one model to move or a turn. But the spindle drones, you could do that in the middle of a game. Like you could just have it be that, oh, a rock got knocked over and underneath that rock was a chasm full of spindle drones and guardian drones. It could be so much fun to just have another problem appear on the board. Kind of like the ambles, just some kind of natural, like in a video game, you could just be walking somewhere and then like a crocodile or a monster just attacks you. And it's not part of the game, it's just a problem to deal with. And I think the spindle drones would be a really fun problem to deal with. It would add a lovely narrative element to a game of Warhammer 40,000 and make the game that much more memorable and that much more interesting. Also, in terms of just making things more interesting, the Guardian drone makes the spindle drones shoot better, just by proximity. Just a really like these guys are actually really tough and really powerful units, and I really want to play with them on the tabletop. It's been so much fun reading all the rules for Warhammer 40k, and all of the rules have been really expansive. Like I've been reading rules for models that I haven't thought of in years and years, and they haven't existed for years and years, but Games Workshop has done a pretty darn good job of taking everything and transitioning it into the world of Warhammer 40k 10th edition. It may not be perfect. Indirect fire, I feel like, is maybe a little bit busted, but you know what? Maybe some Guardian drones and some Spindle drones can take care of that. All of these units and vehicles are absolutely awesome, but I would say they're not quite as awesome as our Patreon. Over there, we have a brand new STL terrain set every single month, and this month we have the Gothic Administratum, the ruined bones of a grim dark city. We also make extra episodes of Eons of Battle, and we have a tier where you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines, and you can join the Crusade. I'm really interested to see how these unaligned units actually function in the world of Warhammer 40,000. Will they pair well with anything in the codexes, or are they just gonna be weird for fun units? But speaking of for fun units, I have some spindle drones to paint.